Well, long ago I used a definition that is, corruption is the misuse of office for private ends. I don't say government office because it could be a university office or a private company. But the point is that you in a position are supposed to be serving the ends of your corporation or your university or your country, and you use the advantage you have, the power, the discretion you have to do things for your family, yourself, your political party that's illicit. That's corruption. When there's more corruption, there is more poverty. The link, though, is complicated. The best estimates are that the corruption to poverty link goes through two ways. One is by reduced growth in investment, and the other is by bad governance all the way around, so that it's associated with weak social services and weaker permitting systems, so that the poor have to pay more to do the same things the rich have to do as a percentage of their income. The net result is, over time, other things equal, more corruption is bad. The reason it's complicated, though, is there are bursts of time, such as in China, where you have very rapid growth and very rapid poverty alleviation and very high corruption. So there are exceptional cases like this, but those who study the problem from a longer perspective might predict that as China goes from $4,000 to $8,000 a year per capita income, or $12,000 a year, it will have to address these big problems of corruption. You know, the answer, Johannes, depends a lot on the kind of a regime you have. So if you have a very authoritarian regime, such as Yemen or Egypt, you had corruption that was involved in brutalizing people. I mean, it came down to actually beating people and torturing people and restricting their freedoms and so forth. Other systems can be, quote, competitive, and yet have tons of opportunity at local levels to rip people off, even to get health services, maternity services, basic goods and services involve bribes. So you have lots of evidence of that, even in countries that are not oppressive. But I guess I think that if you had a hierarchy of sins about corruption that hurts a society, I would put at the top the corruption that undermines the three basic institutions of any economy, which are property rights, justice, and credit. If those systems are systemically corrupted, so that property rights are not enforceable, so that justice is not reliable and honest, and so that credit is not, you don't have to repay if you have high friends, and therefore the whole system goes down and nobody wants to invest. And that really hurts the poor in the long run very much, as well as the rest of it.
Because it reduces access to services, infrastructure is not being built that might have been built if the credit was awarded.
Well, I'm thinking more of the credit that you and I get to, as private investors, to build, not just the government credit to build a road, but the private credit you need to set up a company, and or to set up anything, buy your house. And so if those credit systems are undermined by systemic corruption, where the rich can get loans that you and I can't get and don't have to pay them back, so if the banks are not viable, and then you end up with a credit system that's way under functioning, which is the problem in a lot of these countries. And then it just slows the whole economy down in ways that hurt the poor in the long run quite a lot. Well, let me skirt that question and come around a different way. If you go back to the year 2001 and you ask which was the worst country in the region in anti-corruption as rated by Transparency International, it was Indonesia. Indonesia was at the 3rd percentile. In 1991. It was number, I have this written down somewhere here, number 88 of 91 countries studied in 2001. And since then, it's on a steady rise up to the 38th percentile, which is still below average in the world, but it's a huge improvement despite the challenges of decentralization which they've done, which usually creates tremendous opportunities for corruption. In the long run it's good, but in the short run it's a gold mine for embezzlement and backdealing and so forth. Anyway, despite all the disasters, which are another thing that is very good for corruption, emergency works. You tend to have lots of emergency deals. Gee, I'll do it quickly if you give me another bribe. Despite that, they've made good strides. And some of the reasons why is I'm very pleased with President Yudhoyono. I think he's competent and honest man who has neutralized the military possible interventions that they could have had. The creation of the anti-corruption agency, KPK, has been very impressive. They've gone after a lot of big fish, including Supreme Court justices, members of the ruling party, members of the former president's family, and so forth, to the point where the police has gotten very nervous and has backed them off to some extent. There have been systemic reforms in this monopoly plus discretion minus accountability sense. They've tightened up a lot of the systems. And they still have a long way to go. They have obviously not even in the top half yet, but you can see the investment has just roared into Indonesia. That place is growing very quickly, and the potential there over the next 5 or 10 years is amazing for natural resources, for tourism, and for the creative industries, all the innovative industries that have design features in them, which are high value added industries. The jewelry, the clothing, the tourism of various kinds, the crafts, the architecture and art and so forth. Tremendous potential in Indonesia. But they have rated among the highest, most corrupt agencies are the Supreme Court and other court systems and the Ministry of Religion. Now, isn't that terrible when the Ministry of Religion and your court system, which should be the paragons of civic virtue, are rated among the most corrupt institutions in your society? That can't persist. That's got to be done. So I think you can see the priority list for Indonesia, but I think if you're talking to Myanmar and you're talking to Laos and Cambodia and they say, we can't do it, we're just too la 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 la, say, let's go down to Indonesia and spend a little time down there and see how they've gone from very bad to sort of bad. And they're on the way now up the ladder of success. Well, the government tendering process is notorious everywhere for corruption. As whenever you have a procurement situation, and sometimes over 70% of a government's budget is in procurement. And at each of the stages, from pre-qualification to design of the contract, to awarding of the contract, and then the post-award change orders and renegotiations, they're all fertile soil for corruption. Especially these change orders. Some of those are 70% of all government infrastructure contracts in water, power, roads are renegotiated in the first year when you already have the monopoly power. So we need to get business understanding that it's in their interest to have competitive markets that are not bribe equilibriums but are efficiency equilibriums to help regulate each other, and then have citizens monitor the roadworks as well. By the way, I'm very impressed by Malaysia's government transformation program. It started implementing about 2 years ago. It's already had substantial results already in things like the Global Competitiveness Index. It's doing well. Crime rates are measurably down. And I have some friends working on that with the government, and it's been very impressive. I'm going there on Wednesday, for Thursday and Friday to see what's going on, so I'll know more next week.